On the evening of October 23, 2019, 19-year-old Aniah Blanchard walked into a convenience store in Auburn, Alabama. Security cameras captured what appeared to be an ordinary stop. She had no idea that within hours she would vanish without a trace. Her disappearance would launch a massive search involving local police, state investigators, the FBI, and hundreds of volunteers. For weeks, her family held on to hope, believing someone, somewhere, had seen something that could bring her home. But the evidence investigators uncovered pointed toward a far darker reality. This is the story of Aniah Blanchard, a young woman remembered by her loved ones for her kindness, determination, and bright future, and the investigation that ultimately uncovered the truth behind her disappearance. Before her name became known across the country, Aniah was simply a daughter, a student, and a young woman with dreams that were only beginning to take shape. Born on October 27, 1999, Aniah grew up in Alabama surrounded by a close-knit family that encouraged her ambitions and celebrated her accomplishments. Those who knew her often described her as warm, compassionate, and fiercely independent. She enjoyed spending time with friends and family, and she was known for her positive attitude and willingness to help others. Aniah attended Southern Union State Community College, where she focused on her education while planning for the future. Like many students her age, she balanced school, work, friendships, and family responsibilities. She looked forward to building a career and creating a life filled with opportunities. Her family remained one of the most important parts of her life. She was the step-granddaughter of UFC Hall of Famer Walt Harris, who loved her deeply and frequently spoke about how proud he was of the young woman she had become. Their bond was evident to everyone who knew them. Nothing about October 23, 2019 suggested that it would become the final day Aniah's family would see her alive. That Wednesday evening began like many others. Aniah had plans to meet a friend after finishing work. She was driving her black Honda CR-V, a vehicle that would later become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the investigation. As the evening progressed, surveillance cameras captured Aniah stopping at a convenience store in Auburn shortly before 11:30 p.m. The footage showed her entering the store alone and making a purchase. To anyone watching, there was nothing unusual about her behavior. She appeared calm and unaware that she was being watched. Investigators would later determine that this routine stop marked the last confirmed sighting of Aniah alive. When she failed to meet her friend and stopped responding to phone calls and text messages, concern quickly grew. Friends initially wondered whether her phone battery had died or whether she had changed her plans. But as hours passed without any contact, those explanations became increasingly unlikely. By the following day, her family knew something was seriously wrong. Aniah had never been someone who disappeared without telling those closest to her. She maintained regular contact with family members, and her sudden silence was completely out of character. Missing person reports were filed, and law enforcement immediately began searching for clues. Investigators retraced her known movements during the hours before she vanished. They interviewed friends, family members, coworkers, and anyone who might have spoken with her that evening. Detectives gathered surveillance footage from businesses throughout Auburn, hoping to piece together the timeline of her final known hours. As the investigation intensified, officers searched for her vehicle, believing it might reveal what had happened after she left the convenience store. Days later, they found it. The black Honda CR-V had been abandoned in an apartment complex in Montgomery, Alabama, approximately 55 miles from Auburn. The discovery marked a major turning point. Inside and around the vehicle, investigators found evidence suggesting that a violent struggle had taken place. According to court testimony and investigators, there was blood inside the SUV, including blood that was later confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Aniah. The condition of the vehicle immediately changed the direction of the investigation. Authorities no longer believed they were looking for a missing college student who had simply disappeared voluntarily. Instead, they announced publicly that they believed Aniah had been the victim of a violent crime. The news devastated her family. Still, they refused to give up hope. Search teams expanded across multiple counties. Volunteers joined law enforcement officers in examining wooded areas, fields, roadsides, and abandoned properties. Hundreds of people dedicated countless hours to searching for any clue that might lead investigators to Aniah. At the same time, detectives worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Modern investigations often depend on technology as much as eyewitness testimony. In Aniah's case, investigators collected surveillance video from businesses along possible travel routes, analyzed cell phone records, examined vehicle movements, and processed forensic evidence recovered from her Honda CR-V. Every minute of video footage was reviewed, every potential witness was interviewed, every lead was investigated. The evidence slowly began pointing toward a single suspect. Authorities identified a man named Ibraheem Yazeed as someone who had been present at the convenience store around the same time as Aniah. Investigators alleged that surveillance footage showed him following her after she left the store. As they continued gathering evidence, they learned additional information that intensified the search. Law enforcement agencies across Alabama coordinated efforts to locate Yazeed before he could leave the state. The FBI joined the investigation, offering additional resources and expertise. Public interest in the case grew rapidly. National news organizations covered the disappearance, while social media users shared Aniah's photograph across the country, hoping someone would come forward with information. For her family, each passing day brought a painful mix of hope and uncertainty. They continued appearing before cameras, pleading for information. They thanked volunteers. They urged anyone who knew anything, even the smallest detail, to contact investigators. Walt Harris, despite maintaining his professional commitments, focused nearly all of his energy on helping find his stepdaughter. His emotional public appeals resonated with people across the nation. The family desperately wanted one thing: to bring Aniah home. Unfortunately, investigators were beginning to fear that the outcome might not be the one everyone hoped for. As investigators continued piecing together Aniah Blanchard's final hours, the evidence they collected began forming a clearer picture of what had happened after she left the convenience store in Auburn. Surveillance footage became one of the investigation's most valuable tools. Detectives spent countless hours reviewing video from nearby businesses, traffic cameras, and other locations along possible travel routes. Every timestamp was compared with cell phone records, witness statements, and forensic evidence recovered from Aniah's vehicle. According to investigators, the footage showed a man later identified as Ibraheem Yazeed inside the convenience store around the same time as Aniah. Additional evidence suggested he followed her after she left the store. As officers worked to locate him, they also searched for anyone who might have seen Aniah's black Honda CR-V after it departed Auburn. Those efforts soon paid off. Witnesses reported seeing the vehicle in Montgomery, approximately an hour from Auburn. When investigators located the SUV abandoned at an apartment complex, forensic specialists carefully documented every detail before moving the vehicle to a secure facility for examination. Crime scene technicians photographed the interior and exterior from every angle. Every fingerprint, hair, fiber, and biological sample was collected. The examination revealed signs of a violent encounter. Prosecutors later presented evidence at trial indicating that blood found inside the vehicle belonged to Aniah. The amount and location of the blood led investigators to conclude that she had likely suffered serious injuries inside her own SUV. For her family, that revelation was heartbreaking. Until then, many had still hoped she might somehow be alive. Now, investigators were publicly stating that they believed she had been the victim of foul play. Even so, the search for Aniah did not stop. Law enforcement officers from multiple agencies joined together with volunteers, firefighters, search and rescue teams, and community members. They searched wooded areas, lakes, abandoned buildings, and remote roads across central Alabama. Flyers bearing Aniah's smiling photograph appeared on bulletin boards, storefront windows, and social media pages across the country. A reward for information continued to grow as supporters and organizations contributed additional funds. Despite the growing concern, investigators remained careful about what information they released publicly. Detectives wanted to protect the integrity of the investigation while continuing to encourage witnesses to come forward. Behind the scenes, they were assembling a timeline minute by minute. Cell phone records, surveillance videos, vehicle sightings, witness interviews, forensic testing. Every piece of evidence added another layer to the investigation. Then came a significant breakthrough. On November 7, 2019, authorities arrested Ibraheem Yazeed in Escambia County, Alabama, following an extensive search. According to investigators, he attempted to avoid capture before officers took him into custody. His arrest marked a major development, but it did not answer the question Aniah's family feared most. Where was Aniah? Even after Yazeed's arrest, search teams continued combing rural areas throughout central Alabama. Days turned into weeks, temperatures changed, hope became harder to hold on to. Still, volunteers continued showing up. Many had never met Aniah. They searched simply because they believed every missing person deserves to be found, and every family deserves answers. Then, on November 25, 2019, just over a month after Aniah disappeared, investigators made the announcement everyone had dreaded. Human remains had been discovered in a wooded area of Macon County, Alabama. The location was remote, making it unlikely that someone would have stumbled upon it by accident. The remains were transported to the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences for identification. Soon afterward, authorities confirmed what Aniah's loved ones had feared. The remains belonged to 19-year-old Aniah Blanchard. The news devastated her family, the volunteers who had spent weeks searching, and countless people across the country who had followed the case. The search that had begun with hope ended in grief. In public statements, investigators expressed gratitude to everyone who had assisted during the search, while emphasizing their commitment to seeking justice. For Aniah's family, however, the emotional journey was only beginning. They now faced funeral arrangements instead of welcoming her home. Community members gathered to honor Aniah's memory through vigils and memorial services. Friends described her as someone who always smiled, encouraged others, and dreamed of a bright future. Her death left an enormous void in the lives of everyone who knew her. As the community mourned, prosecutors intensified their work on the criminal case. A homicide investigation does not end with an arrest. In many ways, it enters its most demanding stage. Investigators must ensure that every piece of evidence can withstand scrutiny in court. Forensic scientists complete laboratory testing. Detectives conduct follow-up interviews. Prosecutors organize evidence, prepare witnesses, and build a case capable of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Over the following months, investigators continued examining digital evidence, forensic results, surveillance footage, and witness testimony. The evidence they gathered would eventually become the foundation of a capital murder prosecution. For Aniah's family, every court hearing reopened painful memories, yet they attended whenever possible. They wanted to make certain Aniah's voice was represented inside the courtroom. They believed justice required perseverance, patience, and trust in the legal process. That process would take years before finally reaching a jury. The months following Aniah Blanchard's death were marked by two parallel journeys. One belonged to investigators and prosecutors as they assembled a case built on forensic evidence, surveillance footage, digital records, and witness testimony. The other belonged to Aniah's family, who were learning to live with a loss that no court proceeding could ever erase. Preparing a homicide case, especially one involving capital murder charges, is a lengthy process. Prosecutors must demonstrate not only what happened, but also present evidence that meets the legal standard of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Every piece of evidence is examined, challenged, and documented before it is presented in court. As the investigation continued, authorities outlined their theory of the case. According to prosecutors, Aniah had been abducted after leaving the convenience store in Auburn on the night of October 23, 2019. They alleged that Ibraheem Yazeed forced his way into her vehicle, setting in motion the chain of events that ultimately led to her death. The evidence presented by the prosecution included surveillance footage, cell phone data, forensic analysis of Aniah's vehicle, DNA evidence, and testimony from investigators who had worked the case from the beginning. Each piece of evidence was intended to answer a different question. Where was Aniah last seen? Who was in the area at the same time? How did investigators trace the movements of the suspect? What physical evidence connected the crime scene to the defendant? The answers, prosecutors argued, formed a consistent and compelling timeline. Meanwhile, Aniah's family remained in the public eye, not because they sought attention, but because they wanted to ensure that Aniah would be remembered as more than the victim of a tragic crime. They spoke about the person she had been before the headlines. She loved spending time with friends and family. She was working toward her goals as a college student. She had plans for the future that would never have the chance to become reality. Friends remembered her kindness and sense of humor. Family members remembered her determination. To them, she was not defined by the circumstances of her death, but by the life she lived. As the case moved through Alabama's court system, there were hearings, legal motions, and procedural delays that are common in serious criminal cases. These proceedings often receive little public attention, yet they play a critical role in ensuring that both the prosecution and the defense receive a fair trial. For Aniah's family, however, each delay meant waiting even longer for a verdict. Nearly 3 years after Aniah disappeared, the case finally reached trial. Jurors were selected and sworn in. They understood that their responsibility was significant. Their verdict would have lasting consequences and therefore had to be based solely on the evidence presented in court. Over several days, prosecutors called investigators, forensic experts, and other witnesses to testify. Jurors saw surveillance footage from the convenience store. They heard testimony explaining how investigators tracked the movements of both Aniah and the suspect. Forensic experts described the scientific analysis performed on evidence collected during the investigation, including items recovered from Aniah's Honda CR-V. The prosecution argued that when all of the evidence was viewed together, it established a clear sequence of events and identified the defendant as the person responsible. The defense challenged aspects of the prosecution's case, questioning the interpretation of certain evidence and urging jurors to carefully evaluate whether the state had met its burden of proof. As with every criminal trial, the jurors were instructed that the defendant was presumed innocent unless the prosecution proved guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. After both sides rested their cases, the attorneys delivered their closing arguments. The prosecution asked jurors to consider the totality of the evidence rather than any single piece in isolation. The defense reminded jurors of the importance of applying the legal standard carefully before reaching a verdict. The case was then placed in the hands of the jury. For Aniah's family, the wait was agonizing. After years of searching, grieving, and attending hearings, everything now depended on the deliberations of 12 jurors. When the jury returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere was silent. One by one, the verdicts were read aloud. The jury found Ibraheem Yazeed guilty on the charges related to Aniah Blanchard's kidnapping and murder. For Aniah's loved ones, the verdict brought a measure of justice, but not closure. Justice can hold someone accountable. It cannot restore a life that has been taken. Following the conviction, the court imposed a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The legal proceedings had ended, but Aniah's story continued to resonate far beyond the courtroom. Her case prompted renewed conversations across Alabama about public safety, support for missing person investigations, and the importance of rapid law enforcement coordination when someone disappears under suspicious circumstances. For many people, Aniah Blanchard's name became a reminder that every missing person case represents a family desperately waiting for answers. And for her loved ones, ensuring that Aniah is remembered for the life she lived, not only the tragedy she endured, remains one of the most meaningful ways to honor her memory. As the trial concluded and the verdict was delivered, many people who had followed the case wondered how investigators had managed to solve a crime that, at first, appeared to have almost no witnesses. The answer lay not in a single breakthrough, but in the careful accumulation of evidence. Modern homicide investigations rarely depend on one piece of proof. Instead, detectives build a timeline using dozens or even hundreds of separate details. Surveillance footage, forensic testing, cell phone records, witness interviews, and physical evidence all become pieces of a much larger puzzle. In Aniah Blanchard's case, investigators spent weeks reconstructing her final known movements. Every surveillance camera that might have captured her vehicle was reviewed. Businesses along major roads were contacted. Witnesses who had been in the area that night were interviewed, sometimes more than once, as investigators compared their recollections against newly discovered evidence. Forensic scientists carefully examined Aniah's Honda CR-V after it was recovered in Montgomery. The vehicle became one of the most important crime scenes in the investigation. Laboratory testing confirmed that blood recovered from inside the SUV belonged to Aniah. Prosecutors argued that the evidence demonstrated a violent attack had occurred inside the vehicle. Investigators also relied heavily on digital evidence. In today's world, phones, surveillance cameras, and electronic records often document movements that people themselves may not remember. By comparing digital records with physical evidence and witness testimony, investigators were able to construct a detailed sequence of events that prosecutors later presented to the jury. The case also highlighted the importance of cooperation between agencies. The Auburn Police Department did not work alone. The Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, the FBI, local sheriff's offices, forensic laboratories, and numerous other agencies contributed personnel and expertise throughout the investigation. Equally important was the support of the public. When Aniah's disappearance became national news, thousands of people shared her photograph across social media. Volunteers joined organized search efforts, distributed flyers, and reported possible sightings or information to investigators. Although many tips ultimately did not lead to evidence, investigators often stress that every credible lead deserves to be examined. Sometimes, even a seemingly minor detail can become significant when combined with other information. For Aniah's family, the weeks between her disappearance and the discovery of her remains were filled with uncertainty unlike anything they had ever experienced. Each phone call brought hope. Each passing day brought fear. They repeatedly thanked volunteers, law enforcement officers, and members of the public who refused to let Aniah's case fade from attention. Walt Harris, in particular, spoke openly about the emotional toll of searching for someone you love without knowing where they are or what has happened to them. His public appeals reflected a reality shared by countless families of missing persons. The waiting can be as painful as the answers. After the guilty verdict, members of Aniah's family expressed gratitude to the investigators, prosecutors, jurors, and community members who had stood beside them throughout the process. They acknowledged that while the conviction could never undo what had happened, it represented accountability under the law. In the years since Aniah's death, her case has remained one of Alabama's most widely remembered criminal investigations. Law enforcement agencies continue to reference it as an example of how multiple forms of evidence, surveillance video, forensic science, digital records, and traditional investigative work can come together to solve a violent crime. The case also serves as a reminder of how quickly an ordinary evening can change forever. For Aniah, what began as a routine stop at a convenience store became the final chapter of a life filled with promise. She was only 19 years old. She had birthdays yet to celebrate, dreams she had not yet achieved, milestones her family expected to witness. Those opportunities were taken away in a single night. But while tragedy became part of her story, it does not define who she was. Those who knew Aniah remember her smile, her kindness, her ambition, and the love she showed the people around her. That is the legacy her family continues to protect. As the courtroom emptied and the legal process came to an end, one reality remained unchanged. Aniah Blanchard was gone. For the justice system, the case had reached its conclusion. A jury had weighed the evidence, returned a guilty verdict, and the court had imposed a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For Aniah's family, however, there would never be a true ending. No verdict can restore the conversations that will never happen. No sentence can replace birthdays left uncelebrated, family gatherings with an empty chair, or the future that was taken from a 19-year-old college student. The grief carried by families of homicide victims often extends far beyond the day a trial ends. Holidays become reminders, milestones become bittersweet. Time moves forward, but the absence remains. In the months and years that followed, Aniah's loved ones continued to honor her memory in ways that reflected the person she was, rather than the tragedy that claimed her life. Friends remembered her as someone who was thoughtful and caring, the kind of person who could brighten a room with her smile. Family members spoke of her determination, her independence, and her hopes for the future. They wanted people to remember that before she became the subject of national headlines, she was simply Aniah, a daughter, a student, a friend, and someone deeply loved. Her story also became a reminder of the importance of community. When Aniah disappeared, thousands of strangers chose to help. Volunteers searched wooded areas and roadsides for days, sometimes in difficult weather. People shared missing person posters across social media, hoping someone would recognize her face. Law enforcement agencies from across Alabama coordinated their efforts, bringing together detectives, forensic experts, search teams, and federal investigators with one common goal: finding answers. That cooperation demonstrated what can happen when a community refuses to look away. Although the outcome was heartbreaking, the investigation also showed the power of persistence. Investigators followed every credible lead. They analyzed surveillance footage frame by frame. They relied on forensic science, digital evidence, witness testimony, and meticulous investigative work to build a case that could withstand scrutiny in court. Cases like this are rarely solved by a single dramatic discovery. More often, they are solved through patience, careful documentation, and countless hours of work behind the scenes. The public rarely sees that effort. For every hour spent in a courtroom, investigators may have spent hundreds of hours interviewing witnesses, processing evidence, writing reports, and verifying timelines. Those efforts were critical in bringing the case to a resolution. Aniah's case also serves as a broader reminder that every missing person report deserves immediate attention. When someone suddenly stops communicating, misses planned meetings, and behaves completely out of character, early reporting can make a meaningful difference in the search. Family members and friends know when something feels wrong, and taking those concerns seriously is an important part of protecting lives. While not every missing person case involves foul play, every case deserves urgency and careful investigation. Today, Aniah Blanchard's name remains remembered not only because of the crime that took her life, but because of the impact she had on the people around her. Her family has continued to speak about her with love rather than anger. They encourage others to remember her for her character, her kindness, and the future she deserved. That message has resonated with many people who followed the case. True justice is not measured only by a conviction. It is also measured by how a community remembers the victim. When we tell stories like Aniah's responsibly, we acknowledge the work of investigators, the importance of evidence, and the resilience of families seeking accountability. Most importantly, we remember the person at the center of the case, not as a headline, but as a human being whose life mattered. Aniah was 19 years old. She had goals she was working toward. She had people who loved her. She had a future that should have been hers to write. Though her life was cut short, her memory continues through those who refuse to let her be forgotten. If there's one lesson to take from Aniah Blanchard's story, it's that every missing person represents more than a case file. Behind every search is a family waiting for a phone call, hoping for good news, and holding on to hope even when the odds seem impossible. For investigators, it is a commitment to uncovering the truth. For families, it is a fight to keep a loved one's memory alive. And for all of us, it is a reminder to value every moment with the people we care about and to never underestimate the importance of speaking up when something doesn't seem right. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing for more carefully researched true crime documentaries that focus on the facts, the investigation, and the lives of those affected. If you have thoughts about this case, please share them respectfully in the comments, remembering that real families continue to live with these losses every day. Until next time, thank you for watching, and thank you for helping keep Aniah Blanchard's memory alive.